Hi everyone, welcome to part 3 of Sectionalism. Our questions to think about: what were the major issues surrounding the 1860 presidential election, and why did the southern states secede from the United States? Coming into the presidential election of 1860, the Republican Party is really on a pretty good roll here. Even though they didn't win the presidential election of 1856, they've built a lot of support in the North, and of course only the North, because they are an anti-slavery party. Abraham Lincoln wins the nomination for the Republican Party partly because he's from Illinois, which was a state that the Republicans didn't win in 1856, but needed to win in 1860. And he's more moderate on the issue of slavery than some of the other potential candidates. The Democrats are really going to struggle coming into this election because they are quite divided. We have what's left of the Northern Democrats supporting Stephen Douglas of Illinois, and the pro-slavery conservative Southern Democrats supporting John Breckinridge of Kentucky. But we also have a fourth candidate here, John Bell, representing the Constitutional Union Party. This is really a party of compromise. They really wanted to avoid the contentious issue of slavery in the territories by simply concentrating on the Constitution as it was written and the fact that slavery was legal under the Constitution. So when we take a look at the outcome of this presidential election, it has everything to do with the fact that Abraham Lincoln is an anti-slavery candidate that has allowed the know-nothings to come into this party. Personally speaking, Abraham Lincoln doesn't like the know-nothing agenda. But at the same time, he recognizes he's going to need their support in order to win this election. And that's exactly what happens. Abraham Lincoln is going to win every single free state in the Union and walk away with the win. But immediately, Southerners declare that the election of 1860 was a disaster. They have convinced themselves that Abraham Lincoln is the devil, that he is going to immediately abolish slavery, even though Abraham Lincoln doesn't think he has that power as the president. And so Southerners have sort of worked themselves into this hysteria that Abraham Lincoln is going to immediately abolish slavery. South Carolina is going to be the first state to secede from the Union. On December 20th, 1860, the South Carolina legislature passes the Ordinance of Secession, which, going back to this idea of the compact theory of government, they argue this is possible. By February 1st, 1861, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, and Georgia have all seceded from the Union, and together they've created the Confederate States of America, which they claim is an independent nation. And they're, again, using this idea of the compact theory of government that they can secede or leave the Union. Now, what's interesting about all of this is, first of all, Abraham Lincoln's not yet the president of the United States because Inauguration Day is March 4th. So he hasn't even been sworn in as the president yet. And the Southerners have reacted so vigorously. The other thing is the real reason why the South secedes. Many people had argued about this idea of states' rights. But this is a myth. This idea that the states didn't leave the Union because of slavery. That's exactly why they left. The southern states left the Union in order to preserve the institution of slavery. And if it was really about some other constitutional issue, then I honestly believe that the Civil War would have happened in 1833 with the nullification crisis. But remember, no other state stood with South Carolina in 1833 during the nullification crisis. And it's really not until the commitment to the institution of slavery is threatened with this perceived threat from Abraham Lincoln that the southern states actually leave the Union. With the Confederate States of America, the Southerners have elected a president named Jefferson Davis of Mississippi and a vice president, Alexander H. Stephens of Georgia. And in case anyone is still confused about why the Southern states left the Union, Stephens gives you their answer. He says, quote, "Our new government is founded upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, subordination to the superior race, is his natural and normal condition." In addition, take a look at the Texas Ordinance of Secession that I've put in the topic resource folder, which is also part of your journal assignment. And it makes it very clear that Texas and the other southern states left the Union in order to preserve the institution of slavery. And sadly, President Buchanan, there in the lower right, declared that secession was illegal, but he also stated that he didn't have the constitutional authority to keep the southern states in the Union. And this is why President Buchanan always ends up dead last on the list of great American presidents, because he failed to keep the southern states in the Union and he failed to prevent the Civil War. So in Charleston Harbor, Fort Sumter refused to surrender to South Carolina's authority. One of the things that the southern states did initially was to take control of all federal property within their states by arguing that the United States government no longer has authority over them, that they are an independent nation. But the U.S. Army soldiers at Fort Sumter refused to surrender. There was an attempt to resupply the soldiers, but it fails. And then in January of 1861, the Confederates begin their assault, their bombardment of Fort Sumter. And the fort would hold out until April of 1861, when the fall of Fort Sumter launches the country into this brutal civil war that would last for 4 years and kill nearly 800,000 Americans. So coming back to our questions to think about, what were the major issues surrounding the 1860 presidential election? Slavery, and the fact that there was a fear by Southerners that Abraham Lincoln was going to abolish slavery, even though he personally believed that the president didn't have the constitutional power to do that. And then finally, why did the Southern states secede from the Union? They wanted to preserve the institution of slavery, and that is why they seceded.